more stops in the rain after this. Thanks for making it over this far. My name is Deirdre. I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the setting up and the running of the first Magdalene Asylum in Ireland. And I'm sure you're all very familiar with the Magdalene laundries. So this is a bit of history and how it first began and the rationale behind that. So this is the site of the first Magdalene laundry, and it was founded in 1767 by a woman called Lady Arabella Denny. And the building was then demolished in the 1960s, and the headquarters of the Irish Sugar Company was built here, which is now become the Sugar Club. So the original building is gone, but this was the site. So a little bit of history first on Lady Arabella Denny and who she was and why she wanted to set up the asylum. She was an aristocratic widow, and she's very involved in philanthropic and inspiring initiatives. She's born in 1707 in Kerry, and she was the daughter of the Earl of Kerry and the granddaughter of Sir William Petty, so she was quite wealthy and very well connected in Irish society. She was then widowed in 1972, and she refused many offers of marriage after that, and she's quoted to have said that she had too much experience ever to become a slave again. In 1745 she moved to Dublin, and she became a member of the Ladies' Committee of Dr. Moss's Lying-In Hospital, which we heard the first stop, which is now the site of the Rotunda. In 1766 she was elected the first honorary and first woman member of the Dublin Society, which is also the Royal Dublin Society, built the RDS and places like that. And then the rationale, her rationale and others for setting up the Magdalene Asylum. In the 17th century, legislation really aimed at the containment of prostitution, and there was little compassion in the legal world or in general society for prostitutes. But by the beginning of the 18th century, moralists and reformers questioned this approach. It was still widely believed that prostitutes were sinners, but that their acts were rooted in need and distress rather than in depravity, and that they required rescue and rehabilitation, and this would win back the fallen women to virtue and respectability. And this would benefit both the individuals, the women, and the wider community. So in 1767, with this thinking in mind, Lady Arabella launched an appeal for funds for the Magdalene Asylum, and it opened a year later in the site. And it was based on the Magdalene House in London at the time. And it was to be a refuge where penitents were to be lodged. And their aim was to carefully and consistently instruct women on the principles of true religion and powerfully assist them in their virtuous restitutes. So a little bit about now how it was managed and supported while it was operating here in Leeson Street. There was often appeals to public who were inspired with a truly Christian zeal to turn many to righteousness, and they were asked to pity the diseases, poverty and brutal insults that prostitutes were subject to. And it was also believed that the evil effects of prostitution was not just on the women themselves, but it extended to the wider community. The asylum was also a female-run institution, which was very unusual at the time, and Lady Arabella was in charge day to day until her retirement in 1790. It was also run by a committee of 15 governesses, and there was also an adjoining Magdalene Chapel where many of the high society in Dublin went to worship at the time, and they paid quite large sums of charitable monies towards the asylum every year to worship in that chapel. And the asylum had very strict rules, and the rules of engagement, the rules of management were to promote regularity and discipline for the inmates. So the inmates were allocated set periods for private devotions and meditation, which were compulsory, and all of their correspondence with the outside world was heavily examined. And when they attended chapel, they had to sit hidden behind screens and nobody could see them. And no man was allowed to talk to them while they stayed in the asylum. And they gave up their names when they entered the asylum, and they were assigned a number by which they were known thereafter while they were in the asylum. So how they managed leaving the asylum? The aim of the asylum, so they said, was to equip the women for future livelihood that was based on just fruits of industry, honesty and virtue. And to do this, they offered the women training, mostly in needlework and making clothes, and the women were then entitled to part of the proceeds of their work sold. The women were only allowed to be discharged. They couldn't discharge themselves. They were only allowed to be discharged if they were reconciled with their families or if they possessed the skill to support themselves. So the average stay in the 18th century was about 2 years, and 3 guineas was given to the inmate when she left This was originally paid in a lump sum, but then it was decided that it should be paid in instalments if she could prove that she was conducting herself properly. And clothes and equipment for work were also provided. So a little bit about the religion and its association with the asylum. At the beginning it was irrelevant about the religious backgrounds of the inmates. They accepted in women from different religious backgrounds. However, they all had to attend Church of Ireland services while they were in the asylum, and only one Magdalene is reported to have turned Protestant in the house. However, by the late 19th century, there's an account stating that the asylum was especially intended for Protestant young women only. So this changed and separated, and then there was Magdalene Asylums for Catholic women only as well. A little bit about the social background of the inmates at the time. The majority of women there is information on were engaged in the clothing and textile industry or in domestic service. These were areas of largely completely female employment. They were very badly paid, the work was insecure, and they were very vulnerable, and they often needed supplementary income. So many of the inmates came to the asylum in very poor circumstances. Others came from more stable and moderately prosperous backgrounds, and the minority had families who paid their keep while they were in the asylum and provided for them financially when they left. So while middle class women did become prostitutes, it's certainly not clear that all of the women who entered the asylum had been on the streets or engaged in prostitution. Some of them had been considered fallen for other respects. For example, there is an account of a woman called Maria Nugent who was deceived by a gentleman who married her having another wife at the same time, and she also entered the asylum as a fallen woman. So it's a little bit of history on the background of the first asylum, and then obviously it continued on for centuries, up until very recently. So.